Hello, I am Tiberius Dawnbringer. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm thinking of pretty much beginning my story, or, telling you all my story of my particular spiritual awakening and how I got to where I am today, right now. I think back as far as I can, when I was a child. The earliest age I can remember is 5. And I've always known that I was somewhat different than a lot of the people that were around me. I wasn't really so concerned with everyday stuff that people stress about, now. I understand that being 5, what 5-year-old really deals with that, but growing up even, I never felt like I was really part of this, I don't want to say world, but this reality, the way things are set up and have been set up for a long time. None of it felt right to me, even from an early age. I didn't really have the social maturity to know why I thought or felt that way, or why I didn't really feel a part of it, because I was still learning how things were. I was still trying to understand how everything worked in this reality, and I have to say it took me a lot longer than most people would probably admit. I want to say that around the age of 30 is when I really started to understand, and that was also around the time I decided to actually start taking control of my life, or to take it back, because that's way further down in the story. But so didn't really feel right growing up for many years. I was born in Maryland, and around 13 my family and I moved to South Carolina, and we were there for a couple of decades and all that, but throughout the time there I've been all over the place. But I noticed a huge difference cultural wise when I moved to South Carolina. I learned that there was this thing called racism, and it was very big. It was very uncomfortable and challenging being in that kind of environment. I didn't know that that kind of thing existed. It didn't make any sense to me at all. Why would anybody hate anybody? Most of my youth, when I was growing up, I just wanted to be friends with everyone. I just felt like everyone should be able to get along with everyone else. And to me, there was no understandable, acceptable, or even logical reason why all human beings shouldn't actually love one another. And a lot of people labeled me as naive. Some people labeled me as slow. And some people felt that I was a nice guy. I was really kind. I always wanted to help people. I would give things to people. I learned a lot early in my life that a lot of people like to mistake kindness for weakness, and I got taken advantage of quite often. And I tried to look for the best in everyone. And, I'd get told, don't talk to that person, they're a really bad person, or they'll screw you over, they'll steal from you, or blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And to me, I was just like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, do you even know the guy? And, half the time it was like, well, that's just what I heard. And to me, that wasn't good enough. It's like, anyone could talk trash about someone else. If you're going to buy into everything you hear, then you're just going to be a sheep your whole life. Think for yourself, man. So I would go to these particular people and I would try to friend them. And sometimes I'd be right, but more than half the time I was actually incorrect. It turned out that a lot of human beings in this reality will take advantage of people. They're naive, gullible, and kind. And like I said, it took me many years to learn that lesson. But I just didn't want to. I had that innocence for a long time, and I had a strong belief that human beings generally were or are good people. And I still believe that to today. In fact, I believe that more so now than possibly I did back then. I am more worldly now, so that perspective comes from a different place than it did before in my youth. So anyways, I had a lot of betrayals growing up, and it wasn't just from strangers. A lot of it was from friends as well. On some level, every single person I've ever known has betrayed me in some small way or some major way. And it really destroyed my positive viewpoint on most of humanity for a few years. I think the worst part of my life was when I was in the service of the military for 5 years. That was about a decade ago. And I really saw the ugliness, not just here in America, but in other places as well. But I also saw a not so good side of this country as well in that service, because you get to take a peek behind the curtain when you're in service for the government, depending on your level of security clearance and need to know and all that kind of stuff. But I did get to see parts of the world, and I got to see us on a grander scale, and I did not like what I saw. And I will say right now that those 5 years in service was probably the toughest and harshest time in my life thus far. But I can also say that since I have gotten out of service, it's pretty much been just uphill the entire way. And it's so far from then to now has been a pretty awesome story, and I'll get to that as well. But I'm really just talking about my spiritual awakening. So my whole life I felt like nothing here made sense, and there's no possible way I could be a part of this. This was like a foreign world to me. Like, wherever I came from before, I felt like everything there was great and awesome, and and everyone there was pretty much the same way I was, like loving, caring, happy, just wanting to wake up every day and just be happy that I'm alive, and then go out and do stuff. And it's weird when you go from that kind of environment to this kind of environment. But it wasn't until, in the last 10 years that I really started to learn what this whole life is actually about. And once I started learning that, everything in my life before then makes total and absolute sense. I had to go through all that experience in order to learn particular lessons. I had to go through those experiences to prepare me for what I'm in the process of doing right now. Myself and many other people out there. If you're watching this video, it's a good chance that you're probably one of those people. Either that, or you might be going through your own awakening and you're just curious as to what it's like for other people. And I hope that on this channel I'll be able to help guide you in some way in that regard. So, okay, so we're just over 10 minutes. So I'll try to condense the story some. So, yeah, went through those harsh experiences, but it was probably like growing up. My teenage years, I was very rebellious. I loved that part about me, but I was also very optimistic. I was, I guess, like if you took like one of those online quizzes, like what kind of person are you, I'd probably get labeled as like a freedom fighter or something. I had a friend that told me once, and that if there was a cause worth fighting for, I would fight for it. There was plenty of times in high school where I'd see somebody, I had no clue who this person was, but I would just see them being bullied or mistreated or something of that nature, and I didn't give a damn who it was or what the situation was. I would jump out there and I would defend that person. I would help people when they needed to be helped. And even if there wasn't a reward, and there usually wasn't, to me, living your life, living your truth, following your heart and your principles, to me, for the most part, that was enough of a reward. And for people to actually see that in me, and hopefully recognize that exists within themselves as well. I was never really looking for validation in any of my actions, but if I do something that encourages someone else to do something positive with their life, or some choice they have to make, then that was it. Essentially, being a service to others in everything I do was what I wanted to do. That's how I wanted to live my life. That was before I even knew what all this stuff was about. I was just being me. And I really loved that. But I still had my lessons I had to learn, the harsh ones, and I learned them all. Well, a lot of them. I'm still learning. We're all still learning. You'll never stop with the learning, but the major ones in this life I've learned a lot of, and have moved on from that. And along with those lessons being learned comes a significant amount of healing. There's been a lot of traumas that I've suffered in my life that I finally did the work and was able to actually heal those traumas, those old wounds, those scars. And most of the scars I'm talking about are like, on a soul level, but there's been physical scars I've had on my body that were connected to a particular traumatic event, and when I did the work and forgave and healed, did the healing work, I noticed within weeks that those scars were pretty much gone. A lot of them disappeared. Some of them, there's only a few left that they're still there, but they're very small and they look more, I almost want to say clean. I might give the wrong impression, but they look much better. It's like hardly even noticeable that they're there. And who knows, maybe they're still there just as a reminder that whenever I see them, it's like to remind me, hey, this was associated with that, and remember that, and you managed to get through that. So if I'm going through a tough situation, or there's some other trauma that's come up that I'm having difficulty working through, and I see those particular scars, I could be like, yeah, you know what? It's just another one of those lessons you got to learn. I've done it plenty of times before, and I can do it again, and I'll keep doing it. So I feel like I'm kind of getting off track with my story. So anyways, yeah, so I was very rebellious when I was younger, and it wasn't so much like against my parents or anything, but it was against establishments, institutions, government. And ironic that I ended up working for the government, but give me a break there, please. Okay. We all do things we think are right at the time. And so, yeah, I looked at things and just didn't understand why things were so damn strict, why there were so many rules, why there was so much oppression in just about every arena in life. One of the big ones I noticed throughout my life is like humans and their sexuality, right? Majorly oppressed. It doesn't matter what sexuality you identify yourself as, all across the board you're being oppressed. If you're homosexual or bisexual, there was that oppression there, mostly from the church. Government might have been more quieter about it, but they weren't exactly helping much either, And then you got but the heterosexuals are being oppressed as well. And you might not think that, but it's on a different level, Like sexuality across the board has been oppressed for centuries. To me, sexuality should not be something that's kept in the dark or behind closed doors, or it shouldn't be something that you're made to feel ashamed of or guilty, for having that or acknowledging it and treating it like it's some kind of dark secret. All human beings should be allowed to freely express themselves in that regard, to freely express themselves sexually, because, well, I don't know how you feel about it, but I've always viewed sexuality as a sacred thing. And it is a very sacred act. It is a very sacred practice. And it is a sacred part of human life, as well as spirituality. There is a lot of spirituality involved in human sexuality. But we've also lived a lot of dark times where something sacred has been twisted and perverted, usually by those who already knew the secret behind the sacredness. You come into this world, you forget everything. You don't know what you really are, where you really come from, and you don't know that you are this infinite creative being that can manifest anything and heal anything. You can do pretty much anything that your imagination can come up with. But we're taught from day one not to think that way. We're taught that we're limited, frail, weak creatures, and that we can die very easily, and we're taught to be afraid of everything, and that we cannot take care of ourselves, and that we have to rely on these outside sources, that most of them do know the truths about ourselves, about humanity, and what power we truly have. So they have built this entire level of existence where everything's by their rules, and their rules is to try to keep us completely under control and to keep us completely ignorant to the truth, of what we really are and what our true potentials are. And that is a topic that could take me hours to go into. But I'm pretty much going to stop it right there. I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for my own story. So, but yeah, sexuality has been taken, twisted, and perverted and corrupted into something that is, I hate to say this, but is pretty much negative. Like, almost every human being in existence now has at some point in their lifetime experienced a negative or not so good experience of a sexual nature, usually from someone else, some other perpetrator. And it's horrible that has to happen. And I know quite a few people now, like in the work that I do, I've met a few people that have had some experiences like that during their youth, and they just cannot seem to come to terms with the idea that you can actually experience such things and it'd be a loving, safe, and enjoyable experience. Because all they've ever known and all they have to associate with it was that those one or few not so good experiences. And I believe, well, I'm trying to make it part of my work in the near future. I believe that sacred sexuality is already coming back. It is already coming about. There's plenty of people out there that do the work, that know the things, that talk about it. And there's at least one person on YouTube itself that I watch and pay attention to, and she's very knowledgeable about that particular topic. And I know that there's many more out there. I just haven't had time to do that level of research. But I myself would very much like to become a part of that, a reawakening of the truth about sacred sexuality. And yeah, there's a lot of intense healing on a global scale that can come from that particular truth coming out. And it's a truth that I intend on speaking on in the future when I make other videos. Now we are over 20 minutes. I don't want to go past 30. I'll try to wrap this up. So why did I bring that particular topic up? God, I can't entirely remember, but that's just one of many things in existence that we are all oppressed in some way. Like whatever sexuality you are, there's that level of oppression all across the board. It's different in other countries. There's some countries that are way worse than here in America, and there are other countries where it's actually better. There are some countries that I feel like are already on that level. Excuse me. And they're well on their way. There are some countries that already celebrate, sexual freedom and stuff like that, and they're open about it. I think most of them are in Europe somewhere. Of course, none of it's ever here. Nothing exciting is ever really here in America. I'm just joking. But there's other countries where they have like museums and actual parks, and they have like all this artwork and things on display that you would never find here, because it's like actual paintings and statues and clay pottery and stuff like that, that's of human anatomy parts that we find so horrible and nasty here. It's nonsense. All of that's nonsense. Every part of the human body, from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet to the heart, All of it is sacred. All of it is divine. All of it is a gift. It should not be hidden. It should not be shunned. Anyways, so that's one of many topics that we're lied to about. One of many divine and sacred things that gets perverted and twisted and corrupted. And it's all because we just don't know. We don't know the truth about things. And it just seems like in the past, well, for me, in the past decade, it's really when a lot of this stuff's been coming out. Like, it's coming out so much in such abundance and so quickly that, you know, it's like once the floodgates get open to a certain point, the floodwaters just become so powerful that the gates cannot be closed. And if anything, they're eventually going to be blasted open, and it's just going to be just this huge tsunami of truth that comes out into the world. And you're either going to be on board with it and accept it, or you're not. And it's going to be very difficult for those particular kinds of people. But people like myself and other light workers, if you don't mind me using that phrase or terminology, that's what we're here for. That's part of what we're here for, is to help guide and lead people that need that guidance. We're here to help heal those who are ready to receive healing. That's the kind of work we do. That's the kind of work I intend to do. Whether it's through Reiki work that I've mentioned before, or other healing modalities, or if it's just from me speaking my truth. Just about everything I can do can help heal and bring light to people's worlds. And the more of us that get on board with that, the more of us that start resonating with that level of truth and start resonating with our true powers, we start taking our power back, then the easier it will get, the quicker that change will come, and the faster that, well, everything else that stands in our way will be pretty much just pushed aside and ignored. It's like, nope, you have no power anymore. You never did, but we convinced ourselves you did, and we believed it so much that it pretty much came true. That's how powerful we are as human beings. We create our own reality. Our belief systems give us that power. Once we awaken up to the truth of how truly powerful we are, and we decide, no, we don't want to follow this narrative anymore, we want to follow a better one, and we all put, our creative minds to work, and we will literally change the world, this reality, everything, and it's going to become just so much better. But that's still a little ways away, and that itself is another long topic. So let me get back to this story and let me finish it and wrap it up, because this video is getting to be a little bit longer than I was actually planning on, and I don't want to oversaturate all of you this early on in my venture on YouTube. So I pretty much knew my whole life that something was not right with this reality, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And that was pretty much how my whole life went. And then eventually it got to the point where I just went into survival mode, which all human beings pretty much go into some point in their lives. Most of them go into it earlier than I did, but mine didn't really happen until I was about 25, 26. And I had a decent job. I was liking it. The pay was good. But my boss kept telling me that I need to start looking for another job because he didn't really have much work to offer me and all that. And he kept telling me that, like, every week we got paid. He kept telling me that. He's like, I don't know how much longer I can keep you on and all that. So after a couple of months of that, I started actually believing it, and I got fearful. And I thought, what am I going to do? I've got to find something I can do. And I have no idea how I came to this conclusion, but somehow I thought about joining the military service. And I did. There's quite a story behind that, but I'll just skip ahead to save some time. I joined the military service, and as day one of boot camp, I felt like I woke up from like a 6-month nap, because that whole time from that decision being made to me going through the process of enlisting to me actually getting to boot camp, I felt like I wasn't entirely in control. I felt like some other force kind of took over, not completely, but enough to where, because I guess whatever it was knew that I would never be on board with doing service like that, you know. So get to day one of boot camp, as soon as I'm in my berthing or whatever you call it, it's like I snapped to and I looked around. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? And that was 5 hellacious years of being a part of the establishment that I absolutely disagreed with. It was rough, man. It was very rough, because my personal beliefs and all that, everything that was me, conflicted entirely with everything that was the military service. And I was completely miserable. I was extremely depressed. That was probably the lowest point in my life. And even though I never really attempted suicide, and even at the darkest moment of my life, like, I still had, difficulty being like, oh, this is what I want to do. I'm done with it. As hard as it was, the closest I ever got would be like, I'd lay in my rack and I just think, it would be okay if I went to sleep and didn't wake up. But that's probably the closest to a suicidal thought I ever got. But it happened quite frequently. Usually when I was on deployment. But whatever, it didn't matter. But once time came up to re-enlist, I was like, absolutely not. And I got out. And I decided I would rather be poor, homeless, destitute, and happy than living that kind of life. Getting paid what I was getting paid, but not believing in anything that I did, and dealing with nothing but oppression. No matter how high your rank is, you're always surrounded by oppression. You're always surrounded by people you can't trust, you cannot rely on, because their belief systems are way different than yours. They're very abrasive. It just doesn't work. And I would be miserable and unhappy. And if I managed to actually get with someone, I would probably end up making them miserable and unhappy, because that's the kind of energy I would be putting out. And I don't want to do that to other people. So I got out of there. But shortly before I got out of there, it was like the last few months I was in. Because, there wasn't a lot of work for me to do, because, to be honest, I wasn't really that good at my job. And the only things I could do, since I was processing out, involved me training people. And everyone that I worked with knew how much I despised being in the Navy. They knew how much I didn't care about this line of work. They knew that I just did not want to participate any longer. So they were actually kind enough to pretty much let me go every day around lunchtime, maybe a little bit sooner, and just be like, nah man, we got it, you're good, just go. Just do your thing and go home. So one of these days I went home, and my roommate at the time had Netflix. I had access to it, and I was going through what I had in my queue, and I came across this video, this documentary. What was it? Oh yes, Zeitgeist Addendum. And it was actually, I found out later that was a second documentary movie in a 3-part documentary series. But I just saw it there and I was like, I don't recall ever coming across this or looking for it or putting it in queue, and I know my roommate didn't because he was hardly ever home. And I was just read through the synopsis and I was like, whatever. I was really just looking to have some sound in the background while I went on a computer and probably played some kind of video game at the time. And so I did that, and I sat down. I had my lunch next to me, and I was just logging in, and I was just listening to it out of, in the background. And within the first 3 minutes of this movie, I was just fixated on it. And I logged out of what I was doing, and I took my lunch and actually sat in my chair in front of this thing and watched it all the way through. And all I could think was, oh my God, everything you are telling me in this documentary has been questions I have had my entire life. It didn't cover everything, but it covered a lot of stuff that I've questioned throughout my entire life up to that point. And a lot of it had to do with the monetary system, which was something I questioned growing up. It's like, why do we have this? Why is it like this? It doesn't make sense. And, like taxes, I never understood taxes. I mean, I kind of get it, but it just seemed to me like there was a lot more taxes being taken out than was necessary. I felt like there was just this hidden greed behind the taxes. And going across the country, even now, especially now, you see that all this stuff that your taxes are supposed to go towards fixing is not getting done, amongst other things. It's like, where is this all going? Why are we not reaping the rewards of our sacrifices, of having to give up way more than we actually should? So much that it's very difficult to survive now, because the expenses of everything just keep skyrocketing, and even people with good jobs are finding it hard to keep up, because as quickly as everything's getting expensive, your pay is not moving. It's barely even budging. So that was one thing, but there was a lot of other things in that whole documentary that and even when it ended, I just sat there for like 5 or 10 minutes, like with my mouth open. I was just like that was one of the most profound impacts I've had in my entire life thus far. And now that I realized that there were other people out there who thought the same way that I did, that there were other people out there who are actually getting the answers to these kinds of questions, it pretty much opened up my entire world of possibilities, that there's so much more out there than what I know, that's in my face, that's in my town, that's in, my country or whatever. There's so much more. And that was, if I had to put a defining moment of when my awakening started, it was that moment there. And it was funny because right before that, I was thinking to myself, you're about to get out of the service, you're about to go home. Do you have any idea what it is you're going to do? What are you going to do with your life? And I was like, I don't know. At the time, I didn't really care. I just wanted to be out. I just wanted to be home. And I wanted to forget that this part of my life ever happened and ever existed. And I had enough money saved up to where I could survive at least a year without having a job, even though I did get a job. I'm just saying that I could have relaxed for like months and just gone on this extended vacation and just tried to, because I didn't even want to think about what to do with my life because I was just so exhausted from that experience. But that impactful moment really guided me towards all this other stuff I've done. Everything that I've done that leads up to today. I'll probably get into more detail about this in another video because they're actually over 40 minutes, and I apologize for that. But in short, from that moment on, it led to me, discovering that there's like, healing modalities like Reiki and such out there. It led me to like a lot of metaphysical topics. It led me down so many rabbit holes, conspiracy theories, conspiracy truths, and damn it. Shoot. I apologize. This might happen more often than I'd like it to. But, stuff like that. I started learning that there's all kinds of things out there. There's like shamanism, there's metaphysical topics, there's psychic abilities, there's truths, there's the hidden truth of humanity's own history. Pretty much everything we're taught, we're force-fed throughout all of our years in school is a fucking lie. And I don't believe hardly any of it is truth. There's always a little bit of truth in every big lie, because if there is a little bit of truth, that makes the rest of it believable, or something like that. But that was a big thing for a while, and there was a lot of sources that I got into, that I got familiar with. There's a lot of things out there I supported and still support to this day, and I'm going to go into all of that. I'm going to talk about all these people that exist in this world that at least I know about, who are about the truth, who are trying to do like the light's work and trying to help heal humanity, trying to help free humanity from this age of, I don't want to be too dramatic and say darkness, but we'll just say this age of shadow work. This has been a long, several thousand years at least, of deep global human shadow work. Yeah, that sounds about right. But and I'll give more details about my awakening in those stories as well, in those videos in the future. But for now, if you've been listening this far, I thank you very much. Let me put this down for a second. I would like to offer my gratitude and appreciation to all of you for giving me your time and your energy. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day.